All it takes is a moment.
You accept me as your husband.
To shape our destiny.
Come here.
A single moment.
If you had not come, I should have been dead by now.
To change our lives forever. One moment. A lifetime to wonder.
A man can make himself rather wicked for your Mrs. Grandcourt. She's not my Mrs. Grandcourt.
What might have been.
So Miss Lapidoth is your good cause now, and you have forsaken me.
I have not forsaken you.
George Eliot's extraordinary masterpiece, Daniel Deronda, starts Saturday at 8:55 on BBC One.
Imagine stepping into the high life with the red carpet treatment all the way.
This is paradise.
It's everything you've ever dreamed of.
We only take you to the most glamorous locations.
If you get the questions right, it's a passport to the jet set.
One of our players will be jetting off for a fabulous week of total luxury.
But if you get them wrong, someone else is waiting to put it all away. The National Lottery Jet Set with the National Lottery Draws Live. Saturday at 7:30 on BBC One.
Just before BBC News 24 on BBC One, a look at the holiday weather with Helen Willits.
Hello there, and welcome to our regular weekly look at holiday weather. And this week's chosen destination is New York, and probably not a better time to visit because we've got Thanksgiving coming up and Christmas shopping coming up too. We've got ice skating in Central Park, real great fun here, and of course you could always just relax and catch a Broadway show. Take an extra jumper with you though if you're going and you want to go shopping on Fifth Avenue because temperatures are starting to drop as we go through the weekend. If you want to get outside New York, of course, in the nearby vicinity, you may catch the last of the fall in New England, and we have had some snow already in the Appalachian Mountains, and we've more to come this weekend. And let me show you the system that's going to bring that snow and rain for some. It's stretched right the way up the eastern seaboard of the US, and it's all tied in with another east coast storm. Rain for most, but as you can see around the Great Lakes, that will turn to snow quite readily, and across the Appalachian Mountains. That one pushes out the way, but only slowly. It's going to be the first half of the weekend before we start to see high pressure building and some drier weather, but more rain and snow to come during the second half of the weekend. It's what you'd expect really at this time of year. In fact, rainfall varies little throughout the year in New York. You'd expect probably 10 days a month, that's 1 in 3 days a month, to see some rainfall. And temperatures do fluctuate quite a bit. Despite being on the same latitude as us here in the UK, the summers are generally warmer and the winters generally colder. In fact, as you can see, the latter part of November and into December sees the temperature, the average temperature dropping below 10 degrees Celsius, and we are around about 11 or 12 at this time of year. But it is set to get colder behind those weather fronts. You can see by night that cold air, that frosty weather, comes right the way down into parts of Florida temporarily, but warmer air then rushes its way northwards into the beginning of next week. So a wet day, I think, on Friday if you are travelling. 13 degrees in New York. Then that snap of colder weather starts. 6 degrees on Saturday as things start to quieten down. As we fly further south into the Caribbean, quite a lot of cloud here. And you may have heard of the race, the Route du Rhum. It's been running for 25 years now, from France to the Caribbean. And after some turbulent weather in the last few days, things are settling down. South-southeasterly trade, as you expect, setting in force 4 or force 5 as we approach Guadeloupe. They should finish the race in the next couple of days. Scattered showers here becoming quite isolated on Saturday, but a sticky 30 degrees as you can see through many of the Caribbean islands. In fact, it's a case of lots of sunshine by day, but those heavy downpours brewing up for late afternoon and early evening. Little change here. As we head closer to home, we've had some rather stormy weather through parts of Italy, Sicily and the eastern Mediterranean during the course of Thursday. Well, here are the cluster of storms, as you can see, on our storm detection system, and they're all tied in with this particular area of low pressure that will usher that stormy weather further east into the Greek islands and Turkey as we head into the weekend, and yet more rain rushes in off the Atlantic to many parts of France and Iberia once again. But it's still fairly pleasant if you do catch the sunshine and you want to take a dip in the sea. Temperatures around Cyprus Islands, at least around Cyprus, I should say, 22 degrees. Down under for the cricket, things are hotting up. Some fine weather for the second test here. Temperatures up into the mid-30s by Saturday, but welcome, I think, some rain by Sunday, courtesy of this particular weather system here. Plenty of rain too we've had back home, particularly across eastern Scotland. That's led to severe flood warnings. Some drying weather, I think, through Friday. Sunshine and showers for many. Still wet and very windy up in the Northern Isles, and obviously it won't feel particularly pleasant here. Then it's sun-shining showers again for Saturday, probably more organised showers, longer spells of rain moving their way eastwards into the beginning of Sunday. But by Sunday I think the showers start to settle down, they start to quieten down. Drier weather for many, lighter winds, but that's really ahead of the next set of wet and windy weather which will move its way up from the south during Sunday night and into Monday. And that's your holiday weather.
George Eliot.
She created scandal after scandal.
Free thinker.
The scriptures mingle truth and fiction, and I cannot support their doctrines.
Rule breaker.
To take him away from his wife and children, unforgivable.
Trailblazer.
George Eliot's work was a revelation to her readers.
Maureen Lipman presents the extraordinary life of one of our greatest novelists, George Eliot, author of Daniel Deronda, Sunday at 5:35 on BBC One.
Every year, about 50 people are killed by lethal fumes due to faulty home heating appliances. You can't see it, smell it or taste it, but carbon monoxide can kill. Get your heating system checked every year. It could save your life.
Have survived. As the prize gets closer,
He's a great performer.
the pressure's mounting.
This place is really starting to get to me.
And it's not just the singing that's getting hot.
I snowed Malachi last night.
Fame Academy tomorrow at 8:30 on BBC One, whatever it takes.
Preposterous.
Millions of people in Britain believe homeopathy to be a powerful alternative medicine, yet the scientific community has repeatedly stated that homeopathy cannot work.
I mean, it's preposterous.
Horizon joins the debate and takes on an extraordinary challenge.
Prove that it works, and win $1 million.
Homeopathy, the test. Tuesday at 9 on BBC Two.
And this is BBC One, now joining BBC News 24.
More oil from the sunken tanker Prestige has been washed ashore, contaminating new stretches of the Spanish coast. Communities there are battling to prevent the slick from spreading further, but are being hampered by heavy winds and strong currents which are pushing the oil towards the Galician coastline.
Pulling together in the face of adversity. Tonight in this small fishing village, the whole community had turned out to help the rescue services. They're preparing the booms that will be slung out across the harbour in the hope of avoiding the worst. Because this morning, just down the coast, the worst arrived. Waves that should be crashing against the shore almost seem to be moving in slow motion. The weight of the thick, viscous oil holding the ocean in check. And this is what these volunteers are digging up with their buckets and spades from the beach. In fishing villages like this one, early efforts to hold back the incoming tide by haplessly floating out telegraph poles are noble, but you feel ultimately futile. The town's mayor told me of the sense of despair felt by the local people.
I can't explain. I feel myself very bad now. Very bad, because it's terrible, this for life, for everybody, for animals and for person. Because ecologist system, we form part of this ecologist system.
Just down the road from the town, the ecological damage was plain to see. But upsetting as these images are, nature in previous oil spills has shown itself to be remarkably resilient. Violent storms out at sea are said to have broken the massive oil slick up into 7 smaller ones. Who knows where they'll touch land? Who knows how much more oil will gurgle its way to the surface? Whatever, no one here or anywhere else along the coast is allowing themselves to think that the worst is over. Fishermen are used to waiting and watching on the weather, but there's now a new unpredictable element. The oil that lies a couple of miles out to sea. There is very little they can do but hope. John Sopel, BBC News, Cucabayon in northwest Spain.
Police in the United States have uncovered a cross-country cocaine smuggling racket worth millions of dollars. 72 people have been arrested during Operation Whiteout, which involved investigations from the east coast of America to Mexico. Police confiscated 6 classic cars which were used as collateral during a cocaine deal. They also seized 1,300 kilos of cocaine and 1,000 pounds of marijuana. Coast Guards have issued a warning to all ships sailing close to Buenos Aires in Argentina after several icebergs were spotted just 200 kilometres from land, some of them 500 metres wide. It's very unusual to see ice blocks this big close to Buenos Aires, but experts are confident that the ice will melt in less than a week. The Princess Royal, the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, has been fined £500 and ordered to pay a further £500 in compensation after she pleaded guilty to a charge under the Dangerous Dogs Act. One of her English Bull Terriers attacked 2 boys in Windsor Great Park in April. Princess Anne is the first member of the royal family to have a criminal record.
The arrival of Mrs. Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise Lawrence to face a criminal charge. Thames Valley Police in overdrive. The defendant escorted into court with her husband Timothy Lawrence and her 2 children, Peter and Zara Phillips. As her family looked on, the princess was addressed by the clerk. "Ma'am, may I ask you to stand?" She did so, hands clasped behind her back. Then, "Do you wish to give an indication of guilty or not guilty?" "Guilty," replied the princess, who was then asked to sit down. The court then heard that the princess had been here in Windsor Great Park last Easter Monday, April the 1st. She and her husband had been taking their 3 English Bull Terriers out for a walk. It was at the end of the walk, as they were trying to put the animals in their vehicle, that the youngest dog, an animal called Dottie, rushed off towards a group of children on bicycles and attacked 2 of them. The dog which carried out the attack is one of those in this sequence, which was filmed at the castle the next day. It bit a 12-year-old on the collarbone and twice on the leg. A 7-year-old had bite marks on a forearm and leg. The princess's lawyer said the behaviour was most uncharacteristic. The animal should not be destroyed, he said. The court agreed. After an hour, the princess left, having been fined £500, and warned that if the dog attacks anyone else, it will have to be destroyed. That's not enough for the victim's family. They say justice has not been done. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, Slough.
A Roman Catholic archbishop who shocked the church by getting married last year has returned to his duties. Emmanuel Malingo held a public mass near Rome, attended by 1,000 worshippers. The former head of the Zambian church married a South Korean woman, but renounced her after being threatened with excommunication. He spent a year in seclusion before the Vatican gave him permission to return to the church. This is BBC News. I'm Martine Croxall.
Hello there. We've seen some pretty grey weather across the British Isles on Wednesday and Thursday. Brighter conditions to come on Friday and Saturday with a fair number of showers and more persistent rain on its way into the start of the new week. Certainly though, Scotland has already seen plenty of persistent rain in the last 24 hours. Aberdeen being no exception, and it's due to the persistent rain in northeastern Scotland that we now have 3 severe flood warnings issued here at the moment. The floodline number 0845 988 1188. If you do have any concerns, don't hesitate to contact them. More persistent rain, however, is an issue for northeastern Scotland in the next few hours, accompanied also by strong winds and hill fog on higher ground. Take care if you're heading onto the roads. Conditions should improve pretty quickly though into Friday morning. The rainfall continuing to clear its way northeastwards. Then across Scotland during the course of the day, it will be a day of sunshine and showers. Some of those could be heavy at times, and they will be pretty blustery as well, as the winds remain pretty strong. And that's our story across much of the British Isles. Some fairly strong winds and blustery showers, particularly out to the west and to the south, where they could be thundery at times during the course of the afternoon. Our temperatures around 11 or 12 for England and Wales, and 9 or 10 as we look further north. A good time of year now though to head away, possibly for some finer weather. New York, a good place to head at the moment for some pre-Christmas shopping, but the weather is a little bit changeable. The end of the fall coming in now, still just the chance of catching the last of those leaves, but with some early snow you may catch some early skiing in the Appalachian Mountains. It has been rainfall that we've been seeing here during the course of Thursday, some pretty thick cloud showing up along the eastern seaboard of the States on our latest satellite picture, all due to low pressure here, which continues to work its way eastwards on Friday. Potentially a little bit of snow coming out of that as we see some colder air sinking down from the north. But for Saturday, things do turn somewhat finer. Rainfall for New York, though, distributed quite evenly across the year, typically around 9 or 10 days per month. But the temperatures really are the big change coming in now. By the start of December, we could see the average daytime figure down as low as just 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. And some colder air certainly on its way towards here as we look at the nighttime temperatures for the next few days. A plunge of icy air sinking its way down the eastern half of the States, warming up a touch, though, for Monday and Tuesday. For Friday, temperatures around 13 degrees Celsius in New York with some rainfall. By Saturday, finer weather arrives, but also that colder air, that figure down to just 6 degrees. Plenty of warm air, though, to be found in the Caribbean in the next couple of days. Temperatures here in the mid-20s and some sunshine too if you're heading towards the beach, but also a scattering of showers at times too. Showers also as we head across into Central Europe too. A big swathe of cloud extending its way right the way down in towards the eastern Mediterranean. Low pressure has brought thundery showers in, as we can see, for southern areas of Italy and parts of Greece during Thursday. More to come, particularly for the Balkans as well on Friday, with low pressure close by. All of that sweeping its way further eastwards for Saturday. And certainly we can see the low pressure stays close by to the British Isles too for this weekend. A day of sunshine and showers once again to start us off this weekend, holding on to fairly blustery winds too. Sunday at the moment set to be the best of the weekend with some finer weather around, but the chance of some heavier rain running its way into the south as we go on into the nighttime period, and that will continue to push its way further north for Monday. I'll leave you with a look at the summary.
I'm Peter Jennings for ABC News in New York. On BBC News 24 in just a moment, the news that Americans get about the world.
World News Tonight, next.
This week in Talking Movies, Pierce Brosnan, not as 007, but as a father fighting for the custody of his children in Evelyn. And a picture with Oscar buzz, Far From Heaven, starring Julianne Moore.
The change from a scurrying animal like a shrew to a fluttering bat is surely the most magical in the whole history of the mammals.
An epic tale of survival continues with insect hunters.
He may lack teeth, but I'm going to treat him with caution.
The Life of Mammals, Wednesday at 9 on BBC One.
This is BBC News 24. I'm Martine Croxall. In a few minutes, an American view of world events in World News Tonight. But first, at 1:30, here's a summary of the main news. The Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, has urged firefighters to call off their 8-day strike due to start in a few hours' time. Talks are continuing through the night between the FBU leadership and the employers' negotiators in the search for a last-minute breakthrough. In a statement in the House of Commons, Mr Prescott insisted that the FBU had been offered 16% over 2 years, bringing the average pay to £25,000 a year.
We cannot and will not accept rises for firefighters which are unfair to others. So I say to the Fire Brigades Union, call off the strike, stay at the negotiating table, work out a deal which is fair to the firefighters and fair to all. Mr Deputy Speaker, I promise to keep the House informed. My message again to the Fire Brigade Union is talk, don't walk.
Yeah. The British National Party has won a council by-election in Blackburn in Lancashire. The party's candidate, Robin Evans, who's a builder, won the Mill Hill seat with a majority of just 16 votes. There were demonstrations outside the old town hall where the count took place. It's the first BNP seat in Blackburn. The party already holds 3 in nearby Burnley. Officials in the US say they're holding a senior al-Qaeda leader. Abdul Rashim al-Nashiri was captured in Kuwait several weeks ago and is believed to be a key planner of the attack on the warship USS Cole in Yemen in 2000. He's also thought to have been behind the bombings of the US embassies in East Africa 2 years earlier. The authorities in Indonesia say they've detained a man believed to have masterminded last month's bomb attacks in Bali, which left more than 190 people dead. The suspect is a 35-year-old Indonesian man called Imam Samudra. Western intelligence agencies believe he may also be a senior figure in the militant organisation Jemaah Islamiyah, which has ties to al-Qaeda. Israeli troops have entered a village on the outskirts of Bethlehem to make arrests in response to the latest suicide bomb attack. 11 people were killed and more than 40 others were injured when a bus was targeted in Jerusalem. The Islamic group Hamas says it carried out the attack, which happened during the morning rush hour. The vehicle was packed with commuters and school children. A magistrate has fined Princess Anne £500 for failing to stop her bull terrier from attacking 2 boys in Windsor Great Park last April. The princess pleaded guilty to the charge at Slough Magistrates Court. She must now keep her dog on a lead at all times and attend training classes. The Princess Royal is the first member of the royal family to have a criminal record. Time for all the day's sports news now with Francis Collings.
Hello again. The chairman of the 72 members of the Football League in England have followed the lead of the top clubs in Europe, the so-called G14, by voting in favour of introducing a salary cap to ease their financial plight. They met yesterday to discuss ways of dealing with the game's financial crisis, which threatens to put several English clubs out of business.
Even on the dreariest of days, football clubs can rely on the loyalty of their supporters. Despite the knowledge their hard-earned money often goes straight into the pockets of the players. But the chairman of many teams now say enough is enough and aim to inject some reality into these financially troubled times.
We've got to show to not only our partners but to the government and to potential trade partners that we are capable of sorting this out. And this is a brave step for our chairman to take, and I'm hopeful that that will be seen as a positive sign.
The clubs will now discuss plans which will ensure wages won't account for more than 60% of their income, with the intention to reduce that to 50% in the future. It's hoped the scheme will be ratified by January. A cap may become a financial necessity for clubs like Sheffield Wednesday, who've struggled to pay Premiership wages on First Division income.
We still have 3 players under contracts which are with us from the Premiership days. Those expire at the end of this season, but nevertheless we'll have carried them for 3 years outside the Premiership, and it simply can't be sustained at this level.
Not too many players will be keen to take a pay cut, but clubs are now aware that potential investors who may help to bail them out of their current difficulties will want to see them do their bit first. Nigel Adderley, BBC News, Oxford.
Now, one of world football's most respected and well-travelled managers, Sir Bobby Robson, has been officially knighted for his services to football. Prince Charles conducted the ceremony that bestowed the highest honour, and the former England manager is currently in charge at Newcastle United, but has also been at PSV Eindhoven, Porto, Sporting Lisbon and Barcelona.
He's a footballing survivor. Sir Bobby Robson received his knighthood during his 52nd season in football, a semi-final of Italia 90. But his emotional return to his beloved Newcastle United was something he'd always wanted. And with the side's current form in the Champions League, there's no sign of his enthusiasm waning. Daniela Ralph, BBC News, Buckingham Palace.
The LPGA Golf Tour is reaching the climax to its season with the Tour Championship event in Florida. And after the first round, there's a cosmopolitan 3-way tie for the lead, with an American, a Swede and a Korean leading the way.
Annika Sorenstam has had a year to remember. 10 victories on the LPGA Tour, £2 million in the bank, but still her quest for perfection continues. The Swede was on top form once again. An eagle and 2 birdies on the front 9 laid down the gauntlet.
There she is.
Meg Mallon, a 3-time major winner, led the American Challenge with an almost flawless round of 67. The 39-year-old Florida resident clearly relished playing in her home state. Meanwhile, Sorenstam was using her simple swing to full effect, picking up another birdie via this chip at the 12th.
Carrie Webb.
Australian Carrie Webb may have won the British Open this year, but she'll have to get even closer to the hole to repeat her triumph here of 12 months ago. Se-Ri Pak's 5 wins this year would have been spectacular in a non-Sorenstam year, and when the Korean birdied the 16th to go 5 under, it was no surprise to see the Swede follow suit. While Sorenstam remained steady, Pak birdied the 17th, but just when an outright lead was hers for the taking, a blemish at the last left a 3-way tie after day 1. Giles Gofford, BBC News.
And that's all the sport for now. We'll see you later on.
And that's the summary. I'll be back in 10 minutes with the latest headlines. Now on BBC News 24, a look at the world through American eyes in ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, as seen across the States a couple of hours ago.
On World News Tonight, a major arrest in the war on terrorism. The accused mastermind of a spectacular attack is now in American hands. Suicide attack in the Holy Land, blowing up a bus filled with children. Sick at sea, the cruise ship bug that sickened hundreds of people and turned vacations into nightmares. A different diet, the revolutionary new guide to eating well that turns the food pyramid upside down. We'll take a closer look. And the electronic eye, letting the blind see again, with technology on the cutting edge.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening, I'm Charles Gibson. There's been a major arrest in the war on terrorism. The U.S. now has custody of a man it believes is one of al-Qaeda's most senior officials. Abdul Rahim al-Nashiri is accused of plotting the attack on the USS Cole, among other terrorist plots, and of being at Osama bin Laden's side for 20 years. The big question is what, if anything, this prisoner will reveal about bin Laden's inner circle. Our national security correspondent, John McWethy, is tonight at the Pentagon. John?
Good evening, Charlie. ABC News has learned that Abdul Rahim al-Nashiri was captured about 2 weeks ago in an airport on his way to Malaysia. U.S. officials say that as they have taken out other top leaders in al-Qaeda, this man has risen steadily to the top. They believe that he is in charge of terrorist cells in the Persian Gulf, some in Asia, and that he was in the midst of planning several operations.
Al-Nashiri's resume includes involvement in major attacks against the U.S., Yemen, October 2000. Al-Nashiri is believed to have organized and financed the attack on the USS Cole that killed 17 American sailors. He slipped out of Yemen 4 days before his suicide bombers hit the Cole, giving them final instructions by phone. Nairobi, Kenya, 1998, the bombing of the American embassy that killed 231. Al-Nashiri is believed to have recruited and then helped train his own cousin as one of the suicide bombers. Morocco, earlier this year, he was the alleged organizer and financier of plots to kill tourists and blow up ships coming through the Strait of Gibraltar.
This is a person who's totally dedicated to destroying people from the West, to destroying Americans and American interests. This is what he does for a living and does with great dedication and, unfortunately, with great zeal.
Al-Nashiri is now being questioned, and sources tell ABC News he has already provided what officials hope is important new information about future terrorist plots, people he recruited, and cells he created. Like bin Laden himself, Al-Nashiri was born in Saudi Arabia, but his ancestral homeland is Yemen. He fought with bin Laden against the Soviets in Afghanistan 20 years ago and was reportedly with bin Laden last year in Afghanistan when the U.S. began its campaign against the Taliban and al-Qaeda.
U.S. officials are not saying where al-Nashiri is being held, but they will say it is not in the United States. His capture, officials say, has already set in motion a number of U.S. operations trying to go after the structure that this man created. Charlie?
John, I know that you have known about al-Nashiri's arrest for several days, but a decision was made not to report it. How come?
The corporation, ABC News, was asked by high-ranking government officials not to reveal the name in the hopes that the government could pull some of the strings that on the information that this man had revealed to them, trying to get ahead of the curve on the terrorist cells. ABC News made a corporate decision to not reveal his name for several days.
All right, thanks. John McWethy at the Pentagon. The FBI, meanwhile, is warning law enforcement officials around this country that terrorists could be plotting what it calls maritime attacks. Many suspected individuals have been seen seemingly conducting surveillance of port facilities, cruise ship docks, naval bases, bridges, dams, and power facilities. The FBI warned of threats from boats packed with explosives and what it called combat swimmers who could plant bombs. To Kuwait now, where 2 U.S. soldiers were shot today as they were traveling between military bases near Kuwait City. There have been a number of attacks on U.S. forces in Kuwait in recent months. Here's ABC's Martha Raddatz.
10,000 U.S. troops are now in Kuwait taking part in exercises dubbed Operation Desert Spring, part of the continuing U.S. buildup for a possible confrontation with Iraq. The 2 soldiers who were wounded today were driving a civilian vehicle south of Kuwait City. The Kuwaitis say the soldiers were pulled over by a Kuwaiti policeman who then opened fire on the Americans. In early October, one U.S. Marine was killed by attackers who may have had links to the al-Qaeda network. Kuwait is considered a friend of the U.S., but resentment towards U.S. policies has been running high in the region, particularly U.S. support for Israel.
It is getting more and more difficult for Americans to do business in this region, and that situation is very unlikely to change in the near future.
Today's attack came only hours after a worldwide caution warned Americans everywhere to remain vigilant. Martha Raddatz, ABC News, Washington.
At the NATO summit in Prague today, 7 Eastern European countries were invited to join the half-century-old alliance. It represents the biggest expansion in NATO history. But the main focus there today was on Iraq. NATO leaders lined up behind President Bush in demanding that Saddam Hussein fully comply with the United Nations. But they did not make an explicit statement of support for going to war. ABC's Terry Moran in Prague sat down today with Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld to talk about Iraq.
Iraq has said it has no weapons of mass destruction. December 8th is the date that it has to declare fully. Is the United States prepared to prove on its own that Iraq has these weapons, or is that a job exclusively for the weapons inspectors and the Security Council?
Inspectors trying to inspect a country that is not ready to disarm can't be successful. The only way you would have inspectors are to inspect something, not to force anything.
So if Iraq denies that it has any weapons of mass destruction,
it's doing that every day.
And if it files that declaration on December 8th, that's it for the inspectors? There's no way that they could work?
I don't know how. I mean, inspectors, if a country's determined to fool the inspectors, they can do that.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon says today that U.S. and British warplanes dropped bombs on Iraqi radar sites south of Baghdad. The U.S. says this was in response to Iraqi fire from the ground, and this has happened almost daily now for the last 8 days. There was a devastating suicide bombing attack today in Israel. The Palestinian man blew himself up on a bus in Jerusalem. 11 people died, 4 of them children on their way to school. More than 40 others were wounded, and ABC's John Yang is in Jerusalem tonight.
Book bags and school books littered the interior of the shattered bus and the street outside. Witnesses said the bomber detonated his explosive belt in the center of the bus for maximum effect.
It's black. It's red from the blood. Screaming people. Children running around, doesn't know what to do. This is hell, yeah.
13-year-old Hodaya Asraf was not even supposed to be on the bus. She was late, says her uncle, so she took that bus. Her father was hysterical, hoping she was not on it. This afternoon, her father had to bury her. This was the first attack in Jerusalem in 3 months. It came at the height of morning rush hour. Workers on their daily commute. Children on their way to school. The militant Islamic group Hamas issued a statement saying it carried out the attack in retaliation for Israel's killing of a top official in Gaza 4 months ago and the continuing occupation of the West Bank. They identified the bomber as 23-year-old Nail Abu Hilal from Bethlehem. At his home today, his father said he is proud of him. God chose him, he says, to be a martyr. It was the 85th suicide attack in Israel in the last 2 years. Tonight, 15-year-old Meir Kimchi is recovering from a minor leg injury he suffered in the blast. He had just boarded the bus when the bomb went off and escaped through a window. He says he will be back on the bus. How else, he asks, will I get to school? John Yang, ABC News, Jerusalem.
A couple of other items in the overseas briefing tonight. An American missionary was murdered today in southern Lebanon. Police say she was shot 3 times as she arrived at the Christian center and clinic where she worked. The church that runs the center had received several threats from Muslim groups demanding that it close down. And in Nigeria, a demonstration by Muslims upset that that country is hosting the Miss World contest turned violent in the northern city of Kaduna. The Red Cross said more than 50 people died and 200 others were injured. Muslim groups say the contest is an offense against Islam. When we come back, more of the day's other news and the debilitating virus that ended vacations at sea for hundreds of people. Was the cruise ship or the cruise line to blame? The new study that turns the food pyramid on its head. We'll take a closer look.
The public has been told for many years that fats are bad and carbohydrates are good. In fact, we've known for 30 or 40 years that that's not really true.
And bionic vision for the blind, giving them the miracle of sight. Medicine on the cutting edge.
This is BBC News 24. The headlines at 12 minutes to 2. Talks are continuing to try to avert an 8-day strike by firefighters. The Fire Brigades Union says it's insulted by a 4% pay offer. The employers insist it's 16% linked to modernisation. The United States government says it's captured a key al-Qaeda figure suspected of masterminding an attack on a US warship. Well, we'll have a full bulletin of international news at 2 o'clock, but now we return to World News Tonight.
In Florida today, a giant cruise ship from the Holland American Line has returned home for a very thorough cleaning. Hundreds of its passengers got sick during recent cruises. The cruise line was aware of the illnesses, but the ship kept sailing. ABC's Jeffrey Kaufman is in Fort Lauderdale.
The Amsterdam returned to its home port with 67 fewer people on board than when it left. The missing passengers and crew were taken to hospitals in Caribbean ports, all hit with the contagious stomach virus.
It wasn't so pleasant. I had a hell of a good time.
We did, but I had 3 days with the bug.
That bug, the Norwalk virus, has plagued this ship for a month, disrupting 4 cruises, infecting more than 500 passengers.
People just started getting sick, throwing up, diarrhea, that type of stuff. And the more it went on, the worse it got. We kept seeing ambulances at every port that we came into.
Holland America, the ship's owner, says it warned passengers, but only as the ship was setting sail. For some, that was too late.
If they had told me up front, I don't think I would have done it.
Because the virus is passed so easily from person to person, this became the official handshake. Even the ship's casino was discarding playing cards after a single use. The company has now agreed to cancel the ship's next voyage, hoping to stop the virus before it can spread again.
It will spend 10 days here at the port. We'll bring a crew on to help scrub it down from top to bottom.
This virus is no stranger aboard these ships. According to the Centers for Disease Control, there have been at least 11 outbreaks of the Norwalk virus on cruise ships this year. Holland America is already facing a class action lawsuit after 400 passengers got sick on another ship this summer. The CDC says with the Norwalk virus becoming more common on dry land, it's not surprising that more is showing up on ships.
We were expecting T-shirts out here saying I survived the Amsterdam.
For many of the Amsterdam's passengers, the outbreak was just part of the adventure at sea. Jeffrey Kaufman, ABC News, Fort Lauderdale.
The advocacy group Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or MAD, reports today that the number of drunk driving deaths in this country increased last year after declining for much of the 1990s. More than 17,000 deaths associated with drunk driving were reported in 2001. That's up from 16,500 in 1999. MAD says the war on drunk driving is stalled because states are not adopting stricter enforcement measures. We're going to take a closer look tonight at something all kids learn in grade school that is apparently wrong. That famous food pyramid put out by the government that tells us what to eat to be healthy. For years, doctors have suggested the pyramid is out of date, but now researchers at Harvard have a new study